Good evening and welcome. This is Let's Talk. I'm Jude Pemell, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I speak from the land of the Cammeraygal people here on the north side of Sydney, and this is unceded, stolen Aboriginal land. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and indeed emerging, and any Aboriginal people who may be with us. And welcome to all of you. Lovely to see you again. And tonight's topic is hope. And tonight, as I said, we're going to have a little workshop. And so I'm just going to share my screen with you. And so now, why is hope so important, do you think, in our lives? Anyone? Please. Why is hope important to you in your life?
It gives you the motivation to carry on, continue.
Yes. Good answer. It certainly does. It certainly does. And, well, because we live in, these are dark times. We are living now in very, very, very dark times for our world. And we're dealing with world events and issues that mankind has not dealt with before. And so I'll throw in just a few things. Hope reduces feelings of helplessness. It increases our happiness and it improves our quality of life because it reduces stress. And it's rooted in a belief that our future can be better than our past, and that we have a role to play in making that future a reality. And so goals and willingness, in a sense, are the cornerstone of our ability to hope. So the spirit of hope is about putting other people first, sharing selflessness, and having an attitude of gratitude. Hope in dark times is reliant upon having a belief system that is spiritual and believing that there is more to human existence than my little patch, and than what we can see. And so faith, plays a role here. Here we go. Now, before we get into this, I'd just like to ask all of you, when we mention the word hope, what image does that conjure up for you? Just have a little think about this. What, in visual terms, what image comes to you?
For me, it's a bit of an image of a dream.
Right? So do tell us more.
I don't know. That's just like hope, and to me, it's just like a bit of a dream because it's like an intention you're setting. But to me, yeah, it just feels like a bit of a dream.
Mm-hmm. A dream about
Of the thing I'm putting that I want, that I'm hoping for,
okay.
the intention that I'm putting behind it.
Right. Okay. Good.
Okay, Jude. For me, I think hope would be something like I can work towards like a goal.
Yep.
Yeah. So if I have hope, I can actually make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So having that firm faith as well.
Mm-hmm.
Faith and hope, I think, go well together.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. What about you, Lydia?
Well, faith is definitely one of the ones that comes to mind, and also like a positive vibe, a positive vibe about something.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And Deepak, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. So for me, it's a bright image. It could be anything bright like a sunshine or anything bright. I mean, I can't put a name on it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anything bright is synonymous to hope for me.
Okay. Nice. And what about the rest of you?
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Shanti.
Shanti.
Hope for me is like a hand of help or something to hold on in a hard time, or a light, that to see the light, to see the truth in something that's vague and ambiguous. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good.
I was going to say for myself, I had an image of a flower like blossoming. So a flower blossoms. So therefore, hope to me is similar to a flower blossoming. So I must have hope. I must. Just like a flower can blossom, I can have hope. Yep.
Yes, I like that. And you know, for hope to blossom in our hearts is so important, isn't it?
Also, for me, if there's no hope, there is no life.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's very important to have hope. Like we have hope in God. Yeah.
Yeah. To feel hopeless, hopelessness is such a horrible thing. So depressing and the opposite to hope.
Yes. You know, for me, the word hope just conjured for me when I first thought about it was, and this was an experience I had very recently, like maybe 2 to 3 months ago. I was in the city and I was driving towards the Harbour Bridge and, like driving over the Harbour Bridge. And I looked up and I saw the Indigenous flag flying on top of the bridge. And I have been worked actively on a campaign for about 12 years to get the Indigenous flag flying on the bridge. And I just couldn't believe it when I looked up and saw this flag in front of me. And it was almost disbelief. I thought, am I imagining this? And it gave me hope that perhaps in this country we're ready to begin taking some solid steps toward recognition of Indigenous people. Because without that, our country cannot move forward until we really start to acknowledge the depth of the wounding here. And so that was what came for me. Anybody else like to share anything before we move on? Okay. So, hope as agency and choice. This is from Gabe Phillips. Agency is the belief and experience of being able to make things that personally, oh, hang on, half my screen is obliterated, hang on. Yes, it's the belief and experience of being able to make things that personally matter happen, and powered by choice. Agency is a means of exerting power or influence so that something chosen is obtained or achieved. The goal-directed nature of agency needs to be imbued with choice and hope. A sense of hope comprises positive thoughts about having both the ability to produce workable pathways to a desired goal and having the ability to begin and continue following an identified pathway to a chosen goal. The absence of agency thinking produces a sense of powerlessness to achieve change. Choice and goals are like a compass. Hope and support are wind in the sails. And so this is Gabe Phillips' take on hope. And so hope is very much, to me, about having agency and about having choice. I really love what Gabe Phillips is talking about here.
Actually, Jude, I remember one instance when I was like a teenager. I had this dream. And I had this dream that I actually made this pillowcase. And you know what? I actually achieved that because I actually made it the next day. I just got someone to design it and I actually completed the whole pillowcase in one day. Yeah. So it was just in my thought. I had this dream that I was making this pillowcase. Actually did it. Yeah.
I wonder what the pillowcase symbolizes in your dream.
I'm not sure. I just, it was a nice embroidery type, like with nice flowers, leaves, and branches and everything. So, yeah, it was just amazing.
And when you woke up, how did you feel?
When I finished it, I finished it at 11 at night. But anyway, it was like an accomplishment. So I was very happy and content with myself.
And so just want to invite you to think a little bit about what the absence of hope is and what the
Depression.
of hope are. And so what do you think the absence of hope is or could be?
Is it depression?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
No enthusiasm to move forward.
Yeah. I think depression is an excellent.
Yeah. Hopelessness. That's what it is. And it's just hopeless. There's nothing to live for. You totally give up. No way out.
Mm.
You're just like very helpless,
Yes.
whatever situation you're dealing with,
Mhm.
and you don't feel like you can overcome it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's tends to be because you have no agency. You believe you have no agency in the situation. Because while we have agency, we can actually do something. And, having myself worked with populations of oppressed people, I see what the loss of hope does to people. And when people go into apathy, it's so difficult to get them out of it. And we've seen this so much with our some Indigenous remote communities, where they've just been so oppressed for so long. It's been going on for almost 250 years. Forgotten, not recognised in our constitution, just mistreated, ignored. And I also saw this when I was working with the asylum seekers who are coming to this country, being left up in and
So, Jude, I will ask you a question. So, how would you actually give hope to those asylum seekers? Example, like you've dealt with them face to face. How do you actually give them hope?
yes, well, it's maybe not giving them hope as much as helping them explore their own ability to find hope in a very, very dark situation created by our government, our own government here, very, very deliberately. And so there's a thing, I don't know if any of you have read Mankind's Search for Meaning by Frankl. He was a psychiatrist, young, fairly new graduate psychiatrist in Germany who was taken by the Nazis at the onset of the war. When the Nazis started rounding up Jews in the 30s. And so he and his wife, they had not long been married. They didn't even have kids. Not long married. And he had started writing a book about resilience and a therapy he was developing based on resilience. And the interesting thing was he was captured at this point. And by the Nazis, and he and his wife were, of course, separated. And he had no idea what happened to her after that. And he went, what really saved him in the death camps was the fact that he was a doctor and that he could offer something. And so the Nazis kind of let him live so that he could help his fellow Jews in the camps when they were sick. And so he developed what he called logotherapy. And one of my colleagues and I, both very familiar with his book, and we became very interested in this. So we were reading up on logotherapy because none of the approaches to therapy that we have here in the West were suitable for using in those with those people. They didn't need counselling or psychotherapy in the norms, the accepted sense of the word. They needed hope. And so the work we were doing was very much, in a sense, somewhat experimental, but we were really focused on helping people find their resilience and their hope through these situations. And one of the things that I like to do is to actually encourage people to find their anger, because anger will pull people out of apathy. If they can find their anger, if they can get angry, it will pull them right out of their apathy. And that is a really good move. It's a really good start, because anger is a life-preservant emotion. And once you get people into anger, then you can get them to move on. But when they're stuck in apathy, they'll, it's a death state, absolute death state of hopelessness and darkness and despair. And so, yes, the absence of hope is depression and extreme fatigue. And so, what do you think the opposite of hope is?
Joy.
Good answer. However, I wouldn't say joy is the opposite of hope. Joy might come more as a result of having hope.
Would it be faith
No, the opposite.
of hope?
Yeah. So what?
Positivity?
Sorry?
Positivity?
No, the opposite of hope.
Okay.
Lack of life.
Yep. I would say dread would be the opposite of hope.
It's like a dead end, hopeless. You feel hopeless. You can't see further.
Correct. And sort of,
Opposite. Is that the opposite? I thought the opposite was a positive thing. Oh, okay. I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, no. and
Yeah, I
opposite
did too, actually.
the other binary, the other end of the binary.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant, okay. All right. I get it now. I didn't understand the question.
Mm. Okay, so when we have these polarities, we create a binary. And, you know, in Western culture, we love creating binaries for everything. You know, you're either this or you're that. I don't think other cultures do it the way we do. We're much more seem to be much more black and white than the Eastern and European cultures. And so these polarities, we might talk about pessimism and optimism, for instance. And on both sides, both ends, both polarities believe that this is the best of all possible worlds. And it's a call to inaction. Because if I'm pessimistic, I don't believe I can influence my own situation or the world situation, which actually is not true. And if I'm an optimist, I don't think I need to. You know, it's a much more hopeful situation, but tending to believe that it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be okay. I don't actually have to do anything. And so people will tend to get attached to one binary or the other. They'll be more likely to slide to one end of the scale a lot of the time than the other. And so, which feels more desirable, more true, more available to you? Which is more familiar for you? Is it pessimism or is it optimism? And I'll just, yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, is this an exercise that we're supposed to like do? Or
Yeah, this is just an invitation for you to reflect on your own situation here. And, you know, what does it feel like in your body, whether it's optimism or pessimism? What does that actually feel like? Where do you feel that in your physical body? And what do you lean more towards?
Well, I think when you're pessimistic, you feel heavy and down.
Mm.
And optimistic, you feel a lot lighter and more positive.
Mm.
Yeah. When you're pessimistic, you can feel very, very heavy.
Yes.
A burden.
That's right. And so
Everything's a burden.
which end of the spectrum pulls you personally?
Well, I try to be optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's times where I'm not optimistic all the time.
No, who is?
I think I'm just human.
So the idea that I'm throwing out there to you is that is the idea that both optimism and pessimism are not the appropriate sort of way to go. Because it's like to think that that is the best of all possible worlds, and that I don't need to actually do anything. Means I'm stuck. And so I would say that a lack of hope is also a real stuck position. Anyway, I'm just putting that out there, and it's something for you to think about in regards to yourself. So hope is not the belief that everything is or was or will be fine. The hope I'm interested in is about having broad perspectives with specific possibilities, ones that invite or demand that we act. You know, I was talking about agency before. Agency is really important. Having a sense of agency that, you know, I can influence outcomes in my life. And so we may be living through a time of unprecedented change, but in uncertainty lies the power to influence the future. And now is not the time to despair, but to act. And I think this is something that is very central to Raj Yoga, to our practice of Raj Yoga and to the teachings of Raj Yoga.
I have a question. Sorry to interrupt, but where is this like classes held for this Raj Yoga?
Where are they held? Well, they're held in various centres where Raj Yoga meditation is taught, like in Sydney, there's 5 Dock, and there's other places dotted around Sydney as well. And
Okay.
there's Blue Mountains, there's down in Wilton near the Southern Highlands. And there are also classes on Zoom. And if you would like to make a connection with getting involved in classes, I can certainly help you to do that. And I'd invite you just to stay on camera when we finish at the end.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Thanks.
And so the Christian.
Jude, I'll send the link in the chat box.
Oh, thank you, Ranger.
No worries.
Good for you. Well done. So for the Christians, hope is forbearance, or the attitude that right now it sucks, but if I put up with it, my reward is coming. And so hope is very much a part of the Christian ideal. And for the Buddhists, it's a bit of a different matter, because hope is thought of as an attachment and trying to escape your present reality, where for Buddhists are very much about being in the here and now, in the present, in whatever is going on, be with it, be in it. And look, there is a great deal to be said about this. I'm very much a here and now person myself. They would say that Buddhists would sort of say that hope is a bad thing, which I don't think is accurate at all. And I'm sure a lot of Buddhists would not believe that. And so these are the fixed positions that support inaction. And this comes from a writer by the name of Rebecca Solnit. She's a psychologist as well. And she's written some really lovely books and articles. And so one of the things that she says is that uncertainty is actually a really good thing, because in the spaciousness of uncertainty, you know, we don't know sometimes what's happening. We don't know where our current situation or the current situation is going. And so uncertainty leaves us room to act. And so when we recognize uncertainty, we also recognize that we may be able to influence the outcome. So hope is an embrace of the unknown and unknowable. It's an alternative to both optimism and pessimism. And I can be in the here and now. You know, I can be in the present moment and with whatever's happening, regardless of, you know, what it is. And it's the belief very much that what we do counts. It matters. And so I think this is very much a part of Raj Yoga, that Raj Yoga does impress upon us a sense of personal agency, you know, that I can change myself. And when I change myself, I not only change my own future, I also change the world. And when we understand energy and how energy works, when I change myself, I change my own vibrational frequency, because I am energy. And when I change, when I experience upliftment, when I lift my own vibrational frequency, which, you know, this is what meditation teaches us to do. And then this really gives me a sense of personal agency, because I can do this. Nobody else needs to be involved. I mean, no other human being needs to be involved. And it doesn't matter what is going on around me, either in the world, in my family, at my job. It simply doesn't matter. I can do this myself, and no one can stop me. And I personally have found that to be such an empowering aspect of Raj Yoga and of my spiritual life, because I can do that no matter what, and no one can stop me. No one. The only person who can stop me is me. And so we'd say hope is a very viable alternative to optimism and pessimism. And so the premise that we don't know what will happen is a good one, because actually we don't. We don't know what will happen. You know, things just will come out of left field very, very unexpectedly, as you know, we all know this. Happens all the time. And so hope is, you know, when we embrace the unknown and the unknowable, it's an uplifting alternative to the binary positions of optimism and pessimism. That I matter and what I do matters. That I and what I do will have an impact. And in ways that I can't know at this moment. But I always have agency. And this is one of the things that Viktor Frankl wrote about in Man's Search for Meaning. And basically, as soon as he was set free from the death camp that he was in at the end of the war, the Allies came in and opened all the gates, and the Germans basically sort of ran away into the forests and tried to get home. And not long after he was released, he wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's a tiny little book. I do really recommend. I think it's a book everyone should read. It's a quick read. It's very, very short, tiny little volume, very thin, small book. And so he wrote that book while everything was so fresh in his memory. And what he'd been doing through the war and what his book is about, it's about resilience. And, in the kind of most hopeless, darkest situations. And he helped people in those death camps to stop basically going to the gas chamber willingly.
Sorry, Jude, do you mind, please, sorry to disturb you. Do you mind putting it in the chat, the name of the book, please?
Let me see if I can do that. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Because I've got my screen up, I can't.
Okay, I've got it. Sorry.
I can't actually use my mouse. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But it's just Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor, Viktor, and then Frankl. Can you put it in, Ranjula? But yes, he was helping people find a reason to live. That's what he was doing. And he'd see, because they would all get a cigarette ration in the camps. And they wouldn't smoke the cigarettes, even if they were smokers, because they could sell the cigarettes to the guards. And in exchange for getting a little bit more food, maybe another slice of bread, because they were all starving, as we know. They were all starving. And there was dreadful food shortages across Europe. I mean, Europeans were starving. And so those cigarettes were valuable because they could trade them to, they'd get at a meal, they'd get a bowl of very thin soup, and maybe they could get something from the bottom of the pot. that was a bit more sustaining. I think they got 3 ounces of bread a day and a bowl of soup, something like that. That was about it. God knows how they survived, because they had to go and work on these gangs, slogging it through the snow when their shoes were falling off and worn out, and they were so cold, they were so thinly clothed, and they'd go out and work on these gangs doing hard physical labour on almost no food. And Viktor Frankl said he would keep an eye on people, and if they didn't get up in the morning to go to the work, the labour thing, if they lay in bed and smoked their cigarettes, he knew they'd given up. And next stop was the gas chamber. So he would go and talk to them and say, have you got a wife? Because the men and women were segregated. Have you got, children? And then he'd say, they'll be looking for you. They may be looking for you at the end of the war. What do you want them, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to be able to find you? And he talked to them in those terms, and that would start to ignite the will to live, because they just went into such darkness and apathy. And so we also look at the fact that grief and hope can coexist, and that hope does not have to be connected to a fixed outcome at all. And sometimes, and this is a very spiritual attitude, again, that I love about Raj Yoga, is that all will be well. No matter what happens, everything will happen for the best. Whatever is happening is for the best. And in the Gestalt philosophy, we say that, from where we are, where we stand at this very moment, we don't know the whole configuration of a situation. We only know a little bit of it, and there's always a lot more to unfold. And so we have to be patient and say, okay, from here, this isn't looking real good, but the situation hasn't finished. It's not over yet. There's more to come to this situation. And that's the name Gestalt refers to that. Gestalt means the whole entire configuration. And when we only have a little part of the picture, which often this is the case, we start making huge assumptions when we've only got this little part of the picture. And yet there's a whole lot more to unfold that we don't know yet, and that we cannot know from this present position. And so I think having this understanding that I only have a little bit of the picture, and that the picture, I will get more and more pieces of the jigsaw puzzle as time goes by. And so don't make any decisions or develop an attitude about this situation at the moment, because I simply don't know enough. It hasn't happened yet. There's more to come. And so let's just wait and see. And that's something that I practice in my life. And I do have this radical faith that things will, whatever way they unfold and happen, is for the best. And that ultimately all will be well, no matter how bad it may look right now. And it's about having hope and about having faith. And it's about understanding that there's a lot more going on than I can possibly really understand. Because whatever's happening, other people have to learn from these situations too. And I may not understand what other people have to get out of a situation. And so grief does not interfere with hope at all. And grief is about dealing with the feelings of loss and letting go. And that's a very, very important aspect of our lives. And I'm a great believer in embracing grief. In fact, I'm running a workshop on it next Saturday at Wilton, a full day workshop on grief and bereavement. And about embracing. When we embrace grief and loss, we embrace life.
So Jude, just a request. Could you actually do that one on our next, maybe one after next week? Maybe on grief and
We can. I have
just
done
a
it.
request.
I did
Yeah.
do it much earlier in the year, but we can revisit that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mm. So this is about hope and dread in life, and how these are realities. Hope as grief and non-striving. And hope and fear walk together. They hold hands. And it's a part of life, an aspect of life that is repeated. And that is necessary. Because it's like, if I don't know the darkness, how will I know the light? If I have nothing to contrast it with. If I only know the light, how would I know the light? I must know the dark in order to know the light. And so, knowing these pairs of opposites, this is something that is repeated in life and that we need to integrate. We integrate. Maturing is what happens as we integrate the pairs of opposites in the human personality. And this is a very strong aspect of Gestalt philosophy, Gestalt therapy. And so the polarities of hope and fear, the polarities hold hands, they walk together, and they're just flip sides of the same coin. And so the paradoxical theory of change, which is a a core Gestalt aspect of Gestalt therapy, and it's about working with our hope. Involves working with our hope and our hopelessness. And the paradoxical theory of change, I should do a session on that with you, because it's such a beautiful theory. And I think it's so practical. It's something that we really get so much from understanding. That when there's something that I really want to change, possibly about myself or about my life, that if I develop an aversion to that part of me or to that situation, I won't be able to change it. If I sort of reject, there's something about me that I don't like, and most of us have plenty of bits of us that we don't like, that the ego rejects. And we'll push them down, we repress them, push them down into our unconscious. And they do an awful lot of damage down there. So we need to make them conscious. We need to embrace those things. And this is what the paradoxical theory of change is all about. And I will do a session on that. It's very, very powerful stuff. And here we go, the paradoxical theory of change. And this is very much a comment on the paradoxical process of change, which involves a permissive attitude to what is emerging in the present moment, as well as an abundance of personal and environmental support. Awareness with non-judgmental compassion creates the good enough conditions for being present to immediate experience. Because I can only change in the here and now. I can't change in the past, and I can't change in the future. But right now, in this very moment, yes, I can, and that's exactly how it happens. And that's precisely what Raj Yoga also teaches us. It's not just Gestalt. And so it can be particularly challenging when personal awareness brings people into contact with the very experiences they wish to change or avoid. And at these times, a common reflex is to express a preference for experiences other than those manifesting by judging, rejecting, and moving away. This is not the solution. So transforming one experience into another experience involves both internal and external support. And this interrelationship between self and the other, which may be the therapist, provides the courage to attend and the means to move. And lovely, I think, observation by Gabe Phillips, who's also a Gestalt therapist. And so, you know, there's such a thing as unrealistic hope. You know, someone may have a hope that is completely unrealistic. You know, their partner may have ended the relationship, or the relationship has gone to mush and died. And And they may have this, what we would call a kind of sneaky hope for a relationship or an outcome or a process that has already shown itself to be flawed and to be irrational within this person's life. But people will kind of hold on to a sneaky hope. It's unrealistic, in other words. And so unrealistic hope, we also have to look, our hope has to be within the realm of realistic.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just wondering, can too much hope lead to lack of happiness?
As long as it's, as I just said, as long as it's not unrealistic hope or sneaky hope, you know, for a wonderful outcome in a situation that is completely flawed. You know, it's, for instance, the hope that, say, in an abusive relationship, your partner will change. I would say that is a very flawed situation. And that the hope is completely unrealistic. And so for people, people often, part of staying in an abusive relationship is that the belief that I can change this person, or that they will change and be the person that I want them to be, the idealized version of them that maybe I used to once saw and maybe I fell in love with or really loved. And, you know, will hang in the belief that the person will change, in the hope that the person will change. And, you know, this is a situation that is terribly, terribly flawed. And so I'd say that hope is completely unrealistic.
So how do you draw a line between hope that's real and hope that's like unrealistic? Because you just mentioned about abusive relationship. So when someone's in it, they won't like know that their hope is unrealistic. When, I mean, like if you're hoping for something for that particular person, that hope is never like unrealistic, I think. But then how do you distinguish whether you're like...
It can be, you know, it can be very, very difficult for people, and they get exhausted by the situation, and they very can be quite blinded. And because they're using all their inner resources to survive in the situation, they're not future focused at all. They can't think about anything else but survival. And so it's very difficult. And this is what therapy is, an intervention. This is why intervention is very important in these situations. And I'm not saying that the majority of women in abusive situations do believe this, but initially they will have. And then, you know, it's very difficult to get out of an abusive relationship because there's so much manipulation, there's so many mind games, and narcissistic people have ways of trapping and binding their partner in a catch-22. It's very complex. It's a very complex relational system, and it's not easy to walk away from. But ultimately, the only thing anyone can do is walk away. And so it can take, you know, I've done a lot of this sort of intervention type counselling myself, and I think it's very important that people in these situations do see a therapist and do get intervention, because if they knew what to do, they'd do it. And they need support. They need external support, and they need internal support as well. So they need the inner resources, you know, to walk away. And I think this subject of realistic hope and unrealistic hope is important to examine. You know, if you're in a situation where you're hanging in with a lot of hope, you know, and it may be long term. Sometimes, you know, that is realistic, and sometimes it's not. And so I think it's something that needs to be discussed, not just with yourself, but with an appropriate outside person too. And, you know, we will have our hope story. And how do we organise reality around our hope story, you know? And what does hope, you know, also, what does hope really mean for us personally? No, I think it's important to examine that. You know, hope for me is, you know, it was like when I saw the Indigenous flag on the top of the harbour bridge, gave me such a sense of hope that maybe finally we can begin to take those first steps toward improving this just horrendous situation with our First Nations people that's been going on for 250 years. But we have to act, and we have to act in the here and now. And, you know, I've been on the campaign for that for so long, dealing with state premiers who absolutely point blank refused. They would not countenance flying the Indigenous flag on the harbour bridge. And it was only this current state premier who embraced that as a very important step towards recognition and reconciliation. So that was good. Okay.
There's a saying, hope is not a strategy. Let's go in that direction. You know, hope alone doesn't get you things, and you have to make a plan, and you have to have a strategy. So anything you would like to say in that direction? Because hope is a starting point, but if you're just hoping and not doing anything, not converting that into an action,
Yes,
that's also a good thing, right? That applies to both personal and professional.
absolutely. Yes, to anything. That hope does require agency. You know, I need to have agent, you know, I need to make myself the agent of just give myself agency within a situation, no matter how impossible that situation may seem from this vantage point. And that's, where uncertainty can play a really important role, that, within uncertainty, that, we have a saying in the theatre, the show ain't over till the fat lady sings. And I've said that to myself so often in my life, because I began working in the theatre when I was very young. And show ain't over yet. We know this. And we all have, I believe that every single one of us has heaps of personal agency, within what can appear to be quite a dark world situation that we're going through right now.
So one more point, is there a link between hope and strength?
Oh, yes, I'd say definitely. I'd say hope is a great strength. Having hope is a great strength. And developing.
Okay. I mean, I've seen people who have a lot of hope, but they don't have the strength to take action, to change their situation. And that's why they're just stuck in their situation.
Yep.
Because they only have hope, they don't have the strength. They're just hoping things will change. It's not personal, it could be professional, it could be anything in life. So my experience is, yes, hope gives strength, but my experience is they're two different things. I don't know what is the link between the two. One feeds the other. But if you just have hope and you don't have strength, your situation will not change.
Is it really hope, or do they just want things to change? Because
I'm not talking about any person in particular.
No,
It's just my general observation.
Yes, and that's a very good point, Deepak. It's a very important point. But I think where there's hope, there's also willingness to act.
Not always. I've seen people, they hope the other person to change, but they don't have the strength
They're
to change
waiting.
themselves. So that's the kind of situation I'm talking about,
Yeah.
I think that is very common in relationships, where we hope the other person will change one day. So that's the situation I'm talking about. They don't have the strength to change themselves.
No. Or to deal appropriately with what's happening in the relationship.
Yeah.
And maybe that action involves looking at the self and stop looking at the other person and look at the self, and for me to ask myself, why am I in this relationship when it is so much less than I had hoped or wished for, or am really, want to engage with.
Again, I think that's a dangerous territory, because hope is similar to expectation, and the more you expect, the less happy you are. Correct?
I don't think hope is close to expectation.
Okay. What's the difference?
Well, with expectation comes demand. You should be like this. I want you to be this and behave like this. Rather than looking at the reality and dealing with the reality, working with the reality. But ultimately, if I'm in a situation that is less than okay, less than good, and I need to ask myself what my part is in this sort of engagement, and what have I done to create this? What, you know, I need to look at myself and not just blame and look at the other person. I need to have perhaps higher expectations of myself. Because the answer to why I am here, because we all create our own lives. It's us. I can't actually blame anybody else. I am the master creator of my own life. When we understand the law of karma, that becomes very clear, very obvious. And when I take responsibility, you see, most people actually don't want to take responsibility for their existence. But when I take responsibility for my own existence, that gives me massive agency to create change. And it is at that very point that I grow up. And that is the difference between being a child and an adult. And we would, in my business, say children blame, adults take responsibility. And when I take responsibility, I will act. And if the situation or the relationship or the job or the whatever that I am in is less than satisfactory, if it does not align with my own value system, then I will extricate myself from it. Because the situation isn't going to change. I've got to make the move. I've got to change. And ask myself, how the hell did I get into that situation in the first place? And how am I not going to make this mistake again? So I really need to look at myself and my role in, being part of a situation that is not making me happy, or possibly anybody else happy. And, I think I've extricated myself from a number of situations in life that did not align with my value system. And I know that, for instance, professionally, it's not really so much of an issue now because I'm semi-retired and I'm self-employed. So, but I know from so much experience that if I work for an organisation whose values are not aligned with mine, it will not work. And with people whose values aren't aligned with mine, it's not going to work. Lesson number one in life, be very, very, I got very good at job interviews, and I did a lot of the interviewing because I did not want to make a mistake. I didn't want to commit myself to a role in a dysfunctional organisation, basically. It's not worth it. And so I got very good at asking the right questions. You can still get, you can still get fooled, but the alignment of values, when I go into a situation, whether it's a personal relationship with somebody, a one-on-one, we need to have shared values. I think it's terribly important. And, when I work for someone, I believe our values, we need to have shared values. And so I think values are a very, very, very important guide in getting committed to situations, etc. Good questions, Deepak. You have?
I can I can keep going, but I think the time is ticking. So
Yes, yes.
Just a little comment, I suppose, in my spiritual life with the Brahma Kumaris. We actually say, when we change, the world changes.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's so true, isn't it?
So, yeah, we can't change the other person.
No.
You try changing them, you're going to run into a brick wall, You're banging your head against a brick wall.
And this
Not
is
going
the
to
way.
happen.
It's the way of
Yeah.
the world. It's what the ego does. The human ego does.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Looking at other people gets you nowhere fast.
And also not comparing yourself to others,
Mm,
but improving yourself, no?
mm,
Self-progress.
Yep.
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so we're going to have some meditation. So I will just speak a short commentary. And if you are here and you haven't learned meditation, then the invitation is to keep your eyes open and just focus on the breath for a moment. Taking a deep breath into the innermost part of your being. That part beyond thought, beyond sound. And finding that beautiful still place inside. The wellspring of life force. Place of stillness. Going into that place, into that beautiful spaciousness. And just allowing yourself to just be and to be held in the silence. Just allow the silence and the stillness to hold you, as it always will, always. Just float. Beautiful stillness. And allow the current to take you as you just surrender. To the current, knowing you're completely safe and held. You can just be right here in the now, in the present. Just to be with myself. with the energy of that divine being. Feeling the love. Sweetness, that soul. This is my eternal companion. The one who never leaves me, ever. Keeps loving me, no matter what I do, no matter how many mistakes I make. Loving me through eternity. Lifting me up. This is my eternal companion. Why forget? Now it is time to return. Remember who I am. In this, there is hope. New hope that blossoms. And a great hope for the future. Shanti.